Many Americans living abroad tend to congregate with other Americans in compounds, but not us. We have family friends to this day that were neighbors of ours in Lucknow. Life is full of lessons that I learned from my father. If you know Parv, he was a nibbler. That first day we arrived in Lucknow, we were taken for lunch at the Royal Cafe, which was the best in town. There was a small plate of hors d'oeuvres on the table. Parv popped one into his mouth. Now, American palates are not accustomed to the type of heat that can be generated from an innocent-looking appetizer. I swear I could see smoke coming out of Parv's ears. He tried to pretend nothing was the matter. After 2.5 years in India, the family returned home for 6 months and then was off to Zambia for another 2 years. Upon returning to the States, ostensibly for the education of the children, the family settled in St. Louis and Parv joined the faculty of GWB. If any of you have spent time with Parv, you know his favorite African tale of life and death against the struggle against the fire ants on the Kafui River with the Outward Bound team building exercise with faculty and students. Parv loved to tell of the adventures. I sometimes accuse him of growing the drama with each telling, but the basic facts always remain the same. Back when the symphony played at Kiel Auditorium, there was an occasion when Parv accompanied my mother to a performance. Now, if you know my father, squeaky violins were not his cup of tea. He escorted my mother to the door and promptly went to the other half of the building and took in a basketball game. That's when it was divided up so you could do 2 different things at the same time. They met up afterwards. My mother went to hear the music of Aaron Copland, but little did she know that Parv knew Aaron Copland. Aaron Copland had been a generous contributor to many of Parv's projects over the years, and in fact they had met earlier that day. Parv was ahead of his time and a leader in many ways. He was able to stretch time better than anyone I know through power napping and speed reading, talents he developed before they came routine. My father was supportive of some of my less than mainstream endeavors. At one point, I had a passion for racing motorcycles and was quite involved with the club putting on events at Mid-America Raceway. Parv actually loaned the club seed money to start one of our seasons when we didn't quite have enough. We paid him back, but he later told me that he didn't think he would ever see the money again. The organization is still going to this day, to the best of my knowledge. My father loved people, and he loved what he did. This is evidenced by the fact that even after he retired from GWB, he still maintained an office and was still working to help foreign students run the gauntlet of red tape. He loved my mother, and there were not many days they were apart. They were a great team. He was also very devoted to helping people of the Boot Hill region through his longtime involvement with the Delmo Housing Corporation. Over the last several months, I have received many emails and phone calls telling me what a wonderful man my father was and how much he meant to them. I treasure all of the kind words and shared them with the rest of the family as best I could. Thank you for letting me share with you some of the things that you might not have known about my father, Richard John Parvis.
Well, I didn't have any prepared statements because I was going to fill in some of the gaps that were left by my brother and by others, and he really covered the waterfront very, very well. I think he did capture the essence of my dad, his love of life, his willingness to take on challenges, his love of people, his love of his wife. And what's kind of amazing is you think of him as a unique individual, but to find a woman who would be his match and to go with him and was willing to support him in every endeavor the way my mom did was truly amazing. To have 2 people to be able to live a life together as long and as well as they did is truly to be commended. Now, there's a lot of talk about the travel overseas, and just a little snippet on that. We had my father was kind of a salesman even then. He would never directly approach things. He was always kind of more indirect and wanted people to realize things through their own thoughts and think that they thought of it themselves. So around the world in 80 days that we were taken to see no less than 5 times was not a coincidence. We didn't go to any movies growing up. I mean, rarely. We did not have a TV till after we came back from Africa. So that was 1965. So we were late. We were not early on the curve. So it wasn't a coincidence. He was trying to soften us up to travel. We had a family meeting in which we were going to, being democratic, we were going to vote on whether we should go overseas or not. And so they had already prepared the groundwork by having this wonderful movie, and we're going to have a family vote on it. Well, I don't remember the actual vote. I asked my brother if he remembers a vote, and he couldn't remember either. And I was shocked when the vote came out. We were going because I didn't want to go. I was happy in Minneapolis. I love baseball. I love the United States. And what he had sold us on in the movies didn't really work for me. The snippet on India was about a young lady being burned on the funeral pyre. That was India. That didn't seem like a nice thing to do. I'd also seen a movie at my grandmother's, Grandma Summers. They had a TV, and it was Harry Black and the Tiger. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it was a very scary movie about a man-eating tiger, and a man who was after the man-eating tiger, and a tiger who was after the man who was after the man-eating tiger. And it was all dark and scary, and I don't know if it's set in India, but in my mind it was India. The third piece was Rikki-Tikki Tavi. It's a movie about the cobra and a mongoose. And so I thought of India as snakes, and we didn't have a mongoose, so who's going to help us from the snakes? I wasn't excited about going to India, and I thought the vote was going to be all kids not going, parents going, case closed. But the vote happened or didn't happen, and we went, and ultimately I was sold on travel. They made travel enjoyable. It was never a point A to B thing. It was, they would find the slow boat. They would do around the world in 80 days, not because they couldn't do it faster, but because they didn't want to do it faster. They wanted to savor the moment. We spent time in Thailand and Japan and many places along the way. And even when we got to our destinations in Africa and India, we wouldn't stay in one spot. We'd travel. We'd travel by steam locomotives, travel ship up the Indian Ocean, across the Atlantic on the ship. They would find ways to stretch it out, to savor the sights, the people, visit old students from Washington University and all sorts of strange places in Verona, a foreign student from Italy that was in Camp Wells, I believe. And it was just an amazing way to travel, and it was the right decision. I'm glad we went. Thank you very much for you and Parv for insisting that I go, even though I had way more shots than I had ever wanted to have in my life. It was a worthwhile experience. One expression of Parv's is, it's better to burn out than rust out. And from all you've heard today of his constant involvement with students, he did that. If John and I were trying to talk about, well, when did he retire? And we can't figure it out. We don't know if he ever did. I mean, for a real sense. I mean, they may have stopped paying him a regular paycheck many years ago, but he was still so involved with the people that he was from the university, students and faculty, that he never did retire. He was always involved. He loved everybody that he was engaged with, and he never retired. Parv, you didn't rust out. You did your job. So with that, I'll turn it over to my wife to talk about the kind of fun side about Parv.